There's no one up at the forum. Is there any items on the agenda that nature that need to be covered? Anyone's got conflicts? So then we move on to the minutes of the last meeting. Are they actually correct before first? Yes. Is there any action points or discussion that isn't covered on the agenda that anyone wants to talk about? So we'll move to one receives them. Yeah. Confirm them. So move Gary, seconded Robin. Perfect. And we go on to the district managers report. Thanks.
Madam Chair, so at 9:30, Pam has two of her community response people. Where are they from, Pam?
One is Te Puru and one is Koitunu.
Cool. And so they're going to be calling in, and we're recording it, of course, for the comms, that may be using it for to help promote the community response. So we'll go through as far as that, and then as soon as they come on. Okay, into my report. So I've just done one large report today rather than lots of little ones. So to go on to the disconnection of the tsunami siren paging system, I have on Monday, so just further to this piece, on Monday I met with the resident of the ratepayers chairs in Mercury Bay. There are 10 of them. I met with 8 of them, and there was a couple of proxies came in. Every single one of them is not going to proceed with funding or contributing to funding for community funded sirens. Some of them reluctantly accepting what we're doing, some of them are quite relaxed and quite happy to move on with the new technology. This includes Whitiana. So the Resident Ratepayers Association have decided that they want more consultation from us, and I've agreed to go and do that. So just more engagement with that community, including Wharekāhu. So communities that we have still to work with in terms of getting some sort of agreements is Poa, Paenui and Whitiana. The rest of the communities are accepting more disconnection, which will commence on Monday. So the audio will be going around over the next 4 weeks will be disconnected.
Citizen ratepayers in Whitiana, so is that, there several, so is Len Salt, is he the president?
That's Len's the chair of that group.
And so they are wanting to continue to talk to us, but won't be contributing money to a community siren, if that's what was right. Okay, thank you.
So, yeah, so I mean, we were always going to get to this point sooner or later. What we have to do is continue to promote that booklet that we produced, because it's come back to us that it was a great karma, the karma of the farm in those communities, that when that booklet was handed out, they understood it, they got it, they read it. And so we've got to continue to sell the message of what we want.
Yep. Have we got a plan around that? Like how, yeah, so that, you know, with Labour weekend coming and more people there, etc.
So what we're doing is we're meeting with Michael after this. So we have so the tsunami evacuation project that Pam is leading. This morphs into that.
Yeah.
So we'll be working. Yeah, we'll be doing the disconnection.
All of that, Helen has worked out pretty much a comms plan with our comms team around different times or different weeks what we're going to be promoting.
Excellent.
And obviously the long strong we've gone, tsunami education is going to be pushed around the disconnection time and into summer, and then it gets swapped around with fire safety and other messaging going into summer. Cool. There was another, also we're going to be meeting with Michael today on the fuel campaign, fuel agency.
It's a digital campaign.
Which is a company we're using to help us, like they did with the wood restrictions a couple of years ago, or was it last summer? Last summer. It's a very clever way of getting a message in front of people who are going to visit the Coromandel, on the Coromandel. It's really cool digital education marketing, and it's all around Longstrong Yukon.
The long moving parts.
Yeah.
So we've, today I've had 7 appointments, a lot of them overnight. Requested information, it's quite obvious at times. Give them done, but we are getting through. Okay, so the May storm event, so just recapping on that. The government was, we ended up budgeting $235,000 for that. Came in at 160,000. So we managed to save $40,000. Partly due to the fact that I think we had a tight plan. So what we did is the staff in there, they got the quotes, we got everything together. We got one contractor to do multiple features. We just, that's what recovery planning is about. And it worked, I'm really pleased to say. So what's happened now is that there's a report sitting with finance. They will come to council in September. I missed the deadline for this time out because we didn't have the board meeting. Retrospective funding approval to council in September. So what happened is the mayor and the deputy mayor were able to sign off the immediate budget with repairs, and they did so. So the process is coming to a close now. Reasonably happy with it, but worked as a first time plan.
But the big access way is still on complete. Is that part of that?
That's all part of it. Yep. So
About a metre and a half drop off the 1 Island View still.
So some have decided to leave and just let nature do its thing. Some of them, where there is a high public risk, like elderly people and everything else getting injured, they are working on. But if you've got some concern, Terry, just let me know and I'll pass it on to Jamie to make sure that it's on. But you did ask me, and I did check, and all the access ways are on the list. I just
We had a look around the other day, that they needed some action.
But some companies have decided that with the way of action and the King Tide's coming up with everything else, that it's going to sort itself out. But if it hasn't, let me know and we'll look at it. So it's just segueing into what Pam was just talking about, the evacuation project. On page 3, here's a example of the signs that she is putting up around the toilets. Do you want to add to that, Pam, where you're at with it?
It's going a lot faster than we anticipated. I think we need a couple of months to install the whangamata to Thames-Coromandel. I wasn't sure what staff I had to help me, but we're pretty much done with, I think, 35 signs installed for whangamata, Thames-Coromandel, Onimana, Cooks Beach, Harvey, and Hotwood Beach. Installations on all the public toilets and at least one standalone sign in the main centre of all of these little towns. So I've got all the locations moving for fitting a bloody cargo done. I should get it to the printed on Friday and they'll be installed probably in the next week or 2. And then I have to do a trip to do the whole bloody cargo to Kennedy Bay location. So it's moving a lot faster than we thought.
We've had a few inquiries from people concerned looking at it who live in that area where the inundation is, and asking about resilience around stormwater control and all that. So it's opened up a bit of a can of worms for Bruce and his team. You look at the work down here, they look at the map and they see their place underwater, and it sort of brings a bit of fear to their face. So,
They need to understand what tsunami, the worst case scenario could do, and it's got nothing to do with stormwater. This is tsunami inundation. When we put our first sign up on Williamson Park.
That's quite a key point, and I thought about that the other day when we were on the town, and that came up. And again, it is confusing for our public, like we're talking about tsunamis and risks around flood water, as well as risks around stormwater and flooding from that, but they're coming from different directions, but they're not the same thing, but they're still a risk for the community. So again, we just have to make sure we're doing good comms around that, which I believe the team are around tsunami, and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, we had that a little bit like at Te Puru when we had the storm surge back in 2018. We had people say, "Oh, your stormwater drains were blocked," and that was the problem. It was like that wasn't the problem. The water came in from the sea straight over. Looking at how clear the drains were, that was never going to stop that water. So, but again, it's a good point you raised, Terry, yeah. People get concerned, you know, about that and think, oh, we need a whole lot of stormwater pipes and that'll deal with it, but obviously it won't.
And it's quite interesting that it looks, the inundation area is also the area that usually gets the drains cause issues.
Which makes sense because it's a low, you know, it's the kind of low areas.
Yes. When these maps, when these maps become interactive, like a virtual reality experience, it will also help people understand what they mean and what's the purpose of them. I had two couples there when I saw the first sign, locals who lived in the inundation area, so they came and stood and spoke to us, and they were really impressed. And so yeah, I should have actually recorded that, but I didn't. It was 2 weeks and we were getting run off.
So the more awareness and the more heads up we create, the better it is, because people are becoming more cognizant. The thing is though, if anyone has concerns, they have to ring us. As an elected member, to say, well, here, just ring these guys and they'll talk about it. So we can't get to everybody, but we're getting there.
Yeah.
This is storm surge is totally different in Whangamata. Very, very unlikely that a storm surge will affect Whangamata like it does on the Thames side, just because of the dune system.
And this map shows it very much it's underwater. Depends where the weather comes from, quite honestly. The southeasterly approaches on that beach here is quite strong. That's where a lot of erosion last time. The islands protect the corner more, and then the third beach gets eroded out as well. But somebody's modelled this up to say it,
So this would be, so an hour before that water comes in, Terry, there'll be no one standing up, and that once they pick themselves off their feet after a massive earthquake, they will get the hell out of there anyway. So,
Yeah, so I think, pick up Sally's point, that's the key. This is just tsunami, what this map shows. It doesn't know anything about storm surge or storm water.
Very tsunami is a heading on every single.
it's only so.
But we need to be very clear that this modelling is for tsunami, and yeah.
Just to add to that, maybe we can give a messaging around the fact that that modelling is also 8.7 earthquake.
Yes,
It's
it's not a little shame.
No.
It's 8.7 on the Kumanex, just, you know, just out from the east
There's a
coast.
certain depth of a certain area.
Yeah.
So maybe, yeah.
The information is there. It's on the QR codes that they scan for more information. I went through months of trying to establish what do I put on these forms.
Yes.
Without making them too complicated. And I've taken away the complication and included for more information on the modelling, you go to the WRC QR code and it takes you straight to that page that explains how this mapping was done.
Perhaps for us, who might be approached more, who might be 5 bullet points of key messages, but for tsunami, it will be a big one, not your little shake. Just so that then the community board and councillors have shared information.
It's all that little book that we put out as well.
Yeah, but you know, people need to hear something 7 times in different ways before they understand.
Yeah. Okay. I'll get that to you.
Bullet points, you know, talking points.
Yeah.
You know, just
Yeah.
a bit of simple, you know, it's
Because if we're a bit confused, well, we're average citizens, and so we're, I suppose, a benchmark.
No, good point. Just keep plugging away. Okay, so on page 4 is the new platform that we're rolling out called Whisper. It's quite an interesting tool to add to the toolbox. The good part about it is that it gets to places where people had concerns, like those that didn't have cell phones, those that were a bit more remote. So Whisper gets to them. So, Helen, do you want to?
Yeah, so with Whisper, I think there's 2 benefits to our council. One is internal use. So we add our staff into Whisper, and so for in our business continuity plans, it's send out a text message, you know, saying this is happening, are you okay? Or this is happening, are you available? And the responses come back, and then you've got an instant dashboard. You can see your whole staff, where they are, who's okay, who hasn't answered. So internal for our staff safety, it's really good. And those are lists, equally those lists we can use for our community response plans, we can use for our councillors, anybody to create this instantly message, but also collate responses. The second part is, like we do at the moment with our emergency management email, people can sign up to the, with the alerts, and they can go to email, phone, mobile phone, or they can elect to have a voice call. And I think that covers that, like the age concern issues where some people don't have cell phones or they turn them off at night. So although I think that might be a slightly additional cost which we're looking into, I think it's worth implementing for those real risk situations. And I think this is the best last tool in our toolkit. So we've got an emergency management alert, we've got a Red Cross alert, and then we've got something that will cater for people that don't have cell phones.
How much is it?
It's free, it's not TPD, it's Waikato Regional Council, the group have elected to put it in, so it's part of what we're paying
We
for.
pay for the regional. And the public don't pay a cent for subscribing. It is, they have to subscribe into it. And they then receive whatever messages they tick the box to receive. And the best thing about it is, I checked when we had our meeting this week, it doesn't just give one phone call to the telephone that's in your house on the farm. You can set it to keep ringing until it's actually answered.
So how do they sign up to this?
That'll be a comms thing. There'll be two ways. One is we'll work through our community response groups, where if we've got a community like Te Puru, they've identified maybe 20 really vulnerable people. We can actually get our community response groups to go and sit down with those vulnerable people and go through the sign-up process. And the other one is just straight comms, sign up for this new fabulous tool. But I think our community response groups and that one-on-one conversation will be the best way.
So when you say vulnerable groups, do you look at the plan, the tsunami plan, and say those people who are underwater are the vulnerable groups, or you look for anybody's below a certain level?
It's not about vulnerable groups are in Te Puru. They've got a newsletter that's gone out to every single household, and people can elect to say if there's an emergency, I need assistance. And so it's not hazard related, it's related to how they, like the.
Those that identify themselves as needing assistance in an emergency.
Yeah.
So it's not just tsunami, but it all happens.
Okay.
Yeah, all happens. Yeah, so we're on
We
tsunami.
can geo-fence it as well, so let's just say there's a wildfire on the Thames coast, so instead of knowing the hell out of Whangamata people, we can just geo-fence the messaging to that part of it.
So why wouldn't everybody sign up to it?
But
That's right.
hopefully they will,
Hopefully we'll get a big database.
but we have to load it.
No, that's absolutely, no, that,
No, the public load themselves, but we have to build all the contact list and the database around this. This is also going to be the tool that we need for Waikato Civil Defence. What we will use to call our own staff out and create a meet. It's like a one push button. We have all these messages preset. They push one button to go to social media, goes to all the social media, one button that goes to all emails, one button goes to all the phones. So it's very smart, but it'd be really good for activating us as well.
So when's this going to go live?
The internal activation for CDM staff should be done probably by the end of the year. And going into next year, we will start working on, we're going to start loading our council staff and council staff on, but I think the public side of it will only be next year.
So when can we tell the public?
As soon as we put the system in place, as soon as we built it,
and know it's going to work.
and know it's going to work.
We know it's going to work.
We won't be jumping ahead. Once it's locked and loaded and it's bulletproof, only then will we.
We're telling people that it's coming.
Well, we've got a
I think they
community
need
lead
to
group
be
coming up on the 24th of August. Can we talk about it?
You can say it's coming, that's for sure. And we are using it in our, when we talk in our magazine and when I speak to community response group, because it is coming. And it relieves a lot of the anxiousness around we're taking away something, but we can now actually say there's something else coming that's probably a little bit more reliable.
So to Christmas, it's internally, and then after Christmas, it may be rolled out to the public.
Yes.
In stages, I mean, it's going to take a long time for the database to build. But once it gets momentum, I'm pretty confident we'll build it.
I think by the beginning of next year, we should be able to promote it to the public. Martin?
just something you said as part of that, talking about the identifying vulnerable people and going out and talking to them. I think that's really quite key because a lot of the comments we get are around the sirens was, oh, what about so-and-so who hasn't got this, who hasn't got that? So if we're able to say, look, our community planners
We're being proactive here as well.
have taken that into account.
Yeah.
It just makes it like, oh, okay, right, so, that's, like you said, that's the key.
That goes back to
Key
the
thing
value
to
of the
do.
community response groups.
Yeah.
This is where their input and their support is going to become really, really important.
So this message that comes is to tell the people what the issue is, not to do anything about it. Is that right?
We don't just give alerts without advice. So this is the threat. This is what we expect you to do.
Yeah, but apart from that, they don't do anything else. They don't contact another organisation to come and pick them up and take them away and like that. There's no, it's just informing.
Yeah.
Or just say fire.
Fire, right.
Well, yeah.
No, it would say, people.
Want to go to landlines as well as mobiles?
Yeah,
If you elect for.
Well, the landlines are going, the phones are going.
but people will read what's best for them. And so, and it will be, I'm just acknowledging the resource behind it being to make sure even your staff lists, for them to be current is somebody's job. And so there's a lot of work, but I think really good way of increasing our spread.
And who triggers it? Who pushes the button?
We can, I can say one of the girls, where you go, this all can come from the group. Or it can come nationally.
So the group, Waikato, or,
Regional council.
yeah, and if there was a national, if suddenly at 11 o'clock, the Prime Minister says we're going into level 4 at 3 o'clock today, I presume
Well,
you
that
could get that message as well.
That's the EMA, that's the emergency mobile alert, which
We would put it out.
You get that on the phone now.
you're going to get a few alerts.
Local
Yeah,
You're going to get it from all sorts of different places.
Yeah, it's good to document.
And one thing that we did identify in our last meeting is we have to be very careful, because we might definitely duplicate the alert, but we don't want to contradict
the messages.
the other messaging. So we'll be working with them around the messaging and that they're in line with the
And can
messaging.
you do zones like just that area over there?
Yeah, so we have 11 regional councils, 11 district councils under Waikato. We all have different permission settings, so we could all have access to each other's, or we only have access to our own database, but we keep group as also allow them access, so if we can't, they can activate things on our behalf. So I'm not sure how we're going to work the permissions, but there's really strict settings on. But I think it's really important that it's not just us that has the ability to send messages, but that we can rely on our probably group as well to do it, or even Madam Atabiaka or Hauraki District Council to do it on our behalf when we share permissions.
So your question is more about, can we just send it to one place, like just to Whiringa?
We can share things.
Well, I don't know if we can for this, so that's what we've got to look into.
When the alerts came through for the tsunami with the government, they could rezone it really well. They had to give a map of the area and the instructions to that area. I thought it was pretty clever.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that the kind of thing that will happen again?
So the EMA will still come. We can geolocate the off, had that, so we can do that. And with Whisper, what we're trying to tap into is the people that aren't getting the EMA.
Yeah.
So all we're going to do is just the same message that's going out in the EMA go out via Whisper. And I think when we do our sign-ups, I think if we can't geolocate, what we can do is say East Coast of Birds, West Coast of Birds, or think through like that, so that you actually sign up. I don't know if it'll go down to community.
We might be able to filter on postcodes.
Yeah.
So it's more for the vulnerable that you're talking about, right? I'm getting the message.
It's tapping into that little patch of people that we couldn't get to before.
That fixes your problem with the lack of broadband coverage in certain areas?
Yes.
Right. Okay.
Cool. Thank you. Keep going.
So moving on the 30th of July, we had a workshop with Jose Guerrero. So he was on with the Tsunami Expert, and we're so fortunate to have him with us. So what I've done is I've just cut and pasted a few of his slides, just showing you the science behind what these guys work on. So he's also on the assessment panel. So when we do have a major earthquake in New Zealand or a major tsunami alert, he's one of three on the scientist panels. He contributes to that. But what he is reinforcing is that when we look at this, so if you go to page 9, down the bottom, you'll just see there's the blocks. And the block on the left-hand side there, the two that are closest to the escape, as you can see, see the angle of them. So if we get a major earthquake, undersea earthquake on the Tsunami, it's a boat high effect. So you'll see the angle of the tsunami is going to head north. There is one particular place, as you can see on the map, that will affect us. So that's only one block out of all those hundreds of blocks that would likely affect us. So what he's doing is he put it in perspective for us once again, that yes, a tsunami will happen, and it can happen, and it might happen. But it has to be in the right place, the right depth, and exactly the right angle for it to impact the eastern seaboard.
Yeah, and that's the thing we find. Some areas are quite safe if it comes from that angle.
Yeah.
And other areas are very exposed. And I think that was very good with the South. They picked those beaches that were vulnerable and said, get off the beach. And that was very good.
So if you just look over to page 8, you've got the pink version there. So that was the tsunami modelling that they did for the March the 5th event. And as you'll see, they gave an alert out to Northland, and they gave an alert out, as you'll just see the top of the Coromandel, the barrier.
Yeah.
They put out an alert there. So we have people from pretty out there saying, no, I'm looking at the barrier and you're giving an alert for them, but not me. And this is the science. They modelled this and say, well, we don't think it's going to go to pretty. So it's just an example of the work that these guys behind the scenes are actually doing. And
That was quite a large earthquake on the Coromandel, wasn't it? 7 point something, wasn't it?
the third one was quite.
Yeah.
There was 8 points.
And yet the continental shelf sort of controlled it a little bit, and then the flow of the water coming through, but it didn't impact greatly.
No.
If you guys want, Jose has given us the exact sort of, he's busy working on a playbook for our district and just to help us with understanding where to run and where not. But he's given us pretty much, what do you call it, perimeters of, if you log into the Pacific Tsunami Warning Centre and you know that if an earthquake is south of, below this or above this, in that zone, and it is at a certain depth and a certain magnitude, then go. So I can, when I send you guys the key messages around for the tsunami boards, I will also send you those rules, just so that you have it written down somewhere, and if you are ever in a situation where you want to know, that is the same information that we have.
Can you send that to us?
I'll send it to you.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So to go to page 10, this is what these guys were tracking. So this is from NOAA, which is the American-based satellite alerting program that they have known been about for years. So that red line that you see is the actual following the
What
way.
page are you on?
It's page 10.
Page 15 on my.
Yeah.
So there's the world map. So what they are doing is they were physically, so while we were in the workshop with Jose, that red line was moving. And what he was showing us was what they actually tracked. And they know the depth of it, they know the speed of it, they know the impact that it's likely to have.
That's saying 50 minutes to an hour from when the earthquake happens.
And the cumulative.
Yeah,
Comes from a land count, we've got a bit longer, I think.
go back to sleep. So I've got the full, Jose sent us his full slide, so if you'd like to see it, I'm happy to send it to you.
If It'll be good.
It's got a lot of science in it.
Getting a lot of talk around because you're spreading the word. The people are asking the question, what this, what that.
It's almost like we need a myth bust. I love myth busting and I love, like, so sort of 9 myths and bust them or something like that because people,
Yeah, ask
They-
another question and give the answer, I think.
yeah, because, you know, like people I talk to don't know the difference between an alert to stay away from the beach, to pack up the whole family in the boat and go to the top of the hill. You know, like the language, people get so confused about. So I love this. That's great.
When this came out from this one, it said, and it had the beach, leave the beach, but don't evacuate. In
Yeah.
other words, get off the beach. I thought it was very clear, you know.
Yeah, and
Don't go on the beach, but you're fine in town.
did most people understand that or did some people?
No, other people saying, look, it says get on the beach, so everybody, some took off. So there is a mixed message going out there, but it was very clear on it. It's picture of the beach, stay on the beach, but in town you're fine. I thought, well, that's what it says, follow that.
Definitely the feedback from that is people got the alert and acted without reading the alert.
Yeah.
Right,
Which is good in a way.
Yeah.
And the thing,
Better that than,
we never go to beach social media. People that hook into social media will always go to no, what truth we tell them.
yeah.
So we can only do our best.
We had 3 of the shops pack up all the staff and went up the hill, and the other one sat in the cabin and ran, let's read this thing, doesn't see you can go. Get those guys
Right,
back.
we need to keep going. Is there anyone in the lobby waiting? No? Can you call in? Whether they have to call you? Yeah. But should we keep going?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of the tasks that we are undertaking today, and this is in Helen's portfolio, is that we've got a very old business continuity policy. So while we're talking here, I'll just pass you over to Helen to just give us an update on where we are on that. And what I will hand out while Helen's doing that is just an example, and this is an old example of the Regulatory Services Business Continuity Plan. We were going to include it in the agenda, but it's got individual staff details and that sort of thing. So the CEO said, no, we'll just hand it out. So I'll just hand it out to you just to show you, as Helen's giving us an update on the policy.
so the policy, so business continuity, the original policy was done in 2010. And in 2018, we had this lot to come in and do an assessment of our business continuity and said, you need to update the policy, you need to update the framework, you need to write a crisis management plan, and you need to have some better business continuity plans. So Pam and Gary, or Pam, spent a huge amount of time and effort and developed these business continuity plans in 2019 for all of the departments. So that part was done and they're quite good. But since then, the ISO standard for business continuity has been updated, and so there might be a few gaps. But I think the policy in here might be, I think I've updated it since, but in terms of progress, the business continuity policy is pretty much done. I've just got to finish the framework, but in order to do the framework, I just have to double check where we're going to head with the business continuity template. So there's a few things in there. But, and also, I want to wait until I know from HR that we're going to implement WIFA as our notifying way for our DCP. So at this stage, we're going to have a policy and a framework completed by the end of August. Confirm the business continuity plan template, write the crisis management plan. We've got a process, but we haven't got a plan, and then we'll also go around each of the teams and update their business continuity plan. And saying that when we had the civil defence monitoring and evaluation report in 2019, that's when they came and assessed council in terms of readiness. It was the continuity plans were going to be extensive at that time. So it's like we've got really good plans, but behind the scenes policy and framework were outdated. So we're getting there.
So it's a piece of work that the CEO asked that go to audit and risk as well, just to inform them of what we're doing. So the same sort of done a report to audit and risk, just for their information. So we are looking on it, and possibly closer to the end of the year, we'll get the press policy and council will get a new business continuity plan. It's very timely because we may have to implement them immediately should go to a Liverpool lockdown.
Yeah.
So just what we're doing is we're looking for Rob today, once the announcement's made, we'll work with Rob on introducing the pandemic plan that we have and the business continuity plan, just at the start to just give them the heads up as to where they're going. So if you have no more questions for Helen on that,
Thank you.
big body of
Yeah.
bureaucracy. Okay, so we head to page 26 on mine, which is going to stand bags. So the sandbags that we've had in Palmatara are slowly being distributed. We have some 40 pallets that have gone to Coromandel, and at the moment they're sitting in the yard, they have been redistributed. So in the first week of September, Pam and I are going up to Coromandel to see what we can do with them. They had to get dumped there because the place that we had, Murphy's-Law, they're going to an agreed place and then they got to it was deemed not suitable, so we had to dump them in this yard. So yeah, what's that?
Oh, that's me just waiting to see
So we will get there. It's one of these little projects that we're always trying to fix up the more issues that come in. However, we will provide all of these sandbags around, and communities will be able to have access to them. So we'll just put some effort into getting a plan done. But at the moment, we've got the rugby club. At the moment, the juniors are stacking the bags. They're doing 10 times better job than the seniors do, which is really good. As I said, Pam and I will be working on that at the end of the.
Can I ask, I see, I raised this the other day at the meeting, but doing a rock wall at Kianga. I understood that there was no hard push-ups to go up on the, or hard structures to go on the eastern seaboard that agreed to do that.
Okay, so I don't know anything about it. I know the rock wall's there.
I think that's the private one.
Yeah, but even private one, there was talk about there was not going to be any hard structures put on them.
I don't know, have we got to that point yet? I don't know if we've ruled it out totally.
That was entirely news to me when you raised it in our meeting last week.
We had the coastal engineer, Yarn, back at the time,
Right.
and they said, no, they would not do, and that was, Wirecast goes, well, why don't we do a rock wall in some areas, especially around the harbour where the, it's getting eroded out. They said, no, it's all going to be soft.
So let's put that back to council and management plans and stuff rather than here, because these people won't have any more.
Concerns about it, that we put the rock wall and the roads at the edges, and end up being.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what they will.
Go on with iwi engagement.
Here we go. Okay, so we're making progress. Educators, we've got some there.
Yes, we do.
We just hold it on iwi there. Sure.
So the purpose of this is to let them explain, so who's going to run this discussion? Hello. Welcome.
Hello,
I'm Kelly.
technical difficulty.
Can you see and hear us all?
I can hear you fine. It's a bit echoey, but I can hear you.
Right, thank you. Well, thank you for coming to,
Oh, you're welcome.
who wants to lead off?
I'll get people there.
Hi Lauren, how are you?
Hi, good, thanks.
Thank you for taking the time to talk to our Emergency Management Committee. Pretty much just wanted to give you the floor for a few minutes to explain to the group exactly what community response in Te Puru consists of, what it meant for you and your community, and pretty much where you're at and what your plans look like for the future.
Okay, sure. So Te Puru has a long history with civil defence involvement, well before my time, and I'm not sure exactly how long, but I would say easily decades. Te Puru, we know we have a lot of natural disasters, and we've we've got a list, and in fact, every 2 years we know we can expect something that requires civil defence input. Whether it's, so we've had floods, we've had wind, we've had sea inundation, we've had slips, we have, well, pandemic now. The only thing we haven't had, I think, which we hope we don't get, is a forest fire, but there's a good chance of that. So historically, it was made up of just a couple of keen people in the community who were also a phone tree, and that seemed to work quite well. But then as civil defence kind of nationally, I guess, whatever happened, or locally, I'm not sure, that it kind of petered out. And then a few years ago when TCDC came up and did an open day here in Te Puru, we had quite a lot of community engagement again. And from that came people who were keen to step up and step forward and help drive what is now our committee. So we have a core group of, well, it's 5, now 4, who we call our committee. So we've been driving it for the last couple of years with Pam and Helen and creating our plan, which actually has been really good for us because it's given us some foundation, which we needed. So, I mean, the community themselves are pretty good at rallying when they have to. But we find now that we're a bit more organised. It runs a lot more efficiently and a lot more proactively. So as I say, we now have a committee of 4. We also have phone tree reps. So we've broken Te Puru down into zones. So we have 10 zones. We have about 250 houses in Te Puru. So as I say, we've got about 25 houses in each zone, and each zone has about 2 or 3 phone tree reps, which we liaise with. And we have regular meetings, so our committee probably meet every couple of months. And so what our committee have done is we developed a database of phone numbers, and we surveyed our community to find out who was in the household. We have a lot of batches here as well as permanent residents, so we were able to identify which were batches, which were permanent residents, what skills we have in the community. We've got nurses, we have electricians, we have plumbers, and so we were able to identify those sorts of things. People in the community who were vulnerable, who would need help in the case of an emergency. So we developed that database. We have now a text system that we also can send out text alerts. So that worked really well during the pandemic. We were able to, when we couldn't contact anybody, we were able to send out texts to say, hey, is everybody okay? Let us know if you need some support. We already found that neighbours were supporting each other, but it was just a nice backup. So the other things we've done as a committee is we have organised emergency systems, if you like. So we were very lucky in Te Puru. We have a massive community hall, which has kitchens, toilet facilities, which we've had to use. We had to use in the flood of 2019 when that sea flood came through. We used the hall then as our site to. We had tourists who were blocked, who couldn't get through. So we had people potentially going to stay the night there, which we ended up not having to do. But so in our hall we have full emergency backup. We have a generator. We have all the emergency kits, first aid kits, all of our things that we need. We also we've identified that Te Puru is flood risk, although the hall has never flooded. We can't guarantee that won't happen. So we have now got a second emergency kit, and we've organised, we have a shed, waterproof shed, which we've housed up on the hill. A very kind, one of our committee members has got it in her backyard. So that has another full emergency kit, first aid kits, emergency kits, spare food, all of that in case we're flooded on the flat. So those are the sorts of things we've been doing. We've also had a couple of fundraisers to raise a bit of funds for our group, which has helped us to buy things like the garden shed, the waterproof box that we put our sandbags in, those sorts of things. So yeah, the community are really great, but you know, we're finding more and more that it's getting harder and harder to get people to put their hand up to do anything. They're happy to help when the emergency hits, but
Yes.
it's harder to find people to want to do things when, you know, everything's going swimmingly.
Yeah.
And our community is quite, well, we have a very cross section of elderly, retired people and young families. So the young families are busy with the young families and involved in kindy and school and committees, and our elderly are getting, well, they're the ones putting their hand up, but they're getting less and less physically capable. So yeah, it's a constant drive to try and find people that will put their hand up and help, but generally we're really strong, we're very active and very positive. Yeah, so that's kind of where we're at.
Yeah, sounds so exactly what we're wanting and community need, I suppose, because you know our famous road, you could be on your own there for a period of time, and
We literally were, and we were stuck here. But as I say, we're very self-sufficient, and we've been driving that into our community. And we're very lucky also, we have a dairy here so we have a shop, we have a hall, we have a wonderful community. So we are very capable of looking after ourselves for a few days. Even down to, we've thought about things like, you know, medications, and also we have boats. So, you know, if we have to, we could boat into town. So we thought, and that's the thing with our plan, that it's helped us to think through the scenarios that we hadn't thought of before.
yes,
And little things like, okay, we can use our hall, but what do we do with everybody's pets? And, you know, just funny little things like that you don't think of in a situation that we've now thought through, and we'd know what we would do with people's pets. So, yeah, that's good.
I think that, oh, sorry, you've got a question, Terry? No, I think Te Puru is famous in our community for your sense of community and your readiness and your ability to work together, plus happy to have external expertise and work with Pam and Helen, etc. So just, it takes us to all, I think, and so as elected representatives, we just want to really thank you and our staff team so well for doing all of this work for the day that it will happen and hopefully won't.
Yeah, well, it does. We know it does. Every 2 years, as I say, we have to do something. So, and I think that also the community are aware of that. So it's very much in our minds. Whereas a lot of communities, I suppose, nothing's ever happened. So it's one of those things that will never happen. But for us, it does happen, and it happens often. So.
And I think the other thing before we go is that just people younger than me, how ready they are to help when trouble hits, rather than being on committees and things like that. So it sounds as if you've got that balance of knowing where they are and knowing who they are, and that they'll be there in a second when there's something that needs to be done, but monthly meetings doesn't turn them on. Yeah.
I'm sure you can find one of the things last. And I just would like to comment that in terms of community plans, Te Puru would be the gold standard.
Yes.
In terms of the steps they're taking, and that you apply for funding through the hall committee. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, so we've applied for funding, we've had fundraising dances. Yeah, we're very well supplied and stocked as far as we need to use it now. Not that we're hoping for it.
No, we don't.
No, we don't. We'll give it to the food bank and then buy some more.
So the gold standard is to prove that there's an initiative coming up that Pam's working on where the community groups themselves, the committees get together and talk amongst themselves and then share the best resources and best ideas. So I think that's going to help share the gold standard and the knowledge from groups like.
And we're really keen to work with, because we have the close bays to us, Thornton Bay and Waiomu, who are literally right there, but we got cut off from them during the last sea flood. So we have to be independent because we can't help them when we're cut off from them, but we have, if you can call it expertise, I don't know. We would love to support them and help them with what we do, and because we're only a walkie-talkie call away or a text away from them, so really keen to do that.
Well, thank you very much. Really appreciate it. I arrived in on the Thames coast in November '84 when I was 30, and in that February there was a massive event. And I was living in the Pohui in Waiomu, and we lost Mrs. Suter from the house across the way from me. And so I know well the challenges of the Thames coast, and so thank you very much for your work. Thank you all committee. So much. And without you people and others around you, around the peninsula, we can have all the plans in the world, and it won't help unless they're driven from the community. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. I'll pass on your thanks to the group.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
Have a good day. Bye.
Bye.
I mean, it's cold.
We lost Carolyn. She couldn't get into the call for some reason.
What place is she from?
Kotunu.
Right.
But she actually works for Mercury Bay Area School. She's the counsellor there.
Oh, right.
Another really good group, active community. But we'll do that in the next meeting. So
Yeah.
I've let her go because she's got 10 o'clock.
Just a comment about that, that group really did develop out of, was it strengthened out of those floods beforehand? It wasn't much group where it's been around for 10, 20 years as a group. So it's really been built in the last few years.
Yes, I think COVID pulled them together really well.
Yeah.
They're also very responsive when they got the coastal inundation too, didn't they?
But it's an example of how the Te Puru standard can be built, in the last couple of years in Kotunu. The key is finding people like Lois,
Champion.
the champions in each community, and that's what makes all the difference. And once that's done, that's the hard work. Yeah.
And I think, like she said, they know to expect something on average every 2 years. If you've got a group where nothing really happened at all, people just like, oh yeah, whatever.
They're very aware of
But,
it.
yeah, they just know it's going to go. They're not like, oh, no, but
This is gonna happen.
that's.
Yeah, we're dealing with humans.
Yeah, I just want to take on from this, one of the committee members there that works with Lois is Colleen Flavel.
Oh, yeah, Colin back.
Colleen Flavel.
Oh, yes.
Her brother Barry brother. He's taken on the leadership role for the Tapu Te Mata Keratā Waikawa group.
Wow.
And he's obviously learned a lot from this group, and their plan is phenomenal. We just signed off on it this week, and with their whole community in September. And it's to the point where he said to me, Pam, how do I share this plan with the whole of the community? I said, we don't generally share the plan with the community. That's for the group. We share the guide. He's like, well, that's not why I did this plan. I did this plan for the community. So we've worked a way around it. We're removing all the personal information out of the plan. We're leaving all the procedures in the plan, and we're actually going to publish it on our website. He wants it to be available to all the members of his community. So we are really evolving. I can see community response planning moving into this now.
whereas in the past, we don't share a plan. Now I'm thinking if we can get the plan to look like Barry's, we can share a plan. So yeah, it's growing and developing as we all learn.
Excellent. Yeah,
That's good.
thank you.
In that database, they cover the nurses, the sparkies, that really valuable.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
Right,
so carry on.
Yeah.
So iwi engagement, so on the 6th of June, 8th of June, let's have a look. Yeah, the 8th of June, we all went to Manaia, and had a very good hui there. Frank came along with us, and we set the ball rolling, so to speak, with our engagement with them. So we're doing it on a number of levels. So Pam and Helen are working with, let's just say, basic training and so forth with our partners, fire, police, and now ambulance. They've all joined in as a result of because individually we all go out there and try and do our own thing, and it's just watered down. So collectively, there's this big push.
that's right.
It will take time. Working with the Maori groups and the Maori communities is quite slow, and we're aware of that. And so, but we are working on them. And on another level, if we are going to rely on the resources of the such, have you been to Manaia?
Yes.
It looks like how good it is. It's just, it's fabulous. It can probably cater for 500 or 600 people for a number of days. So if we're going to rely to be our go-to place during an emergency, the question has been asked is, well, what are we going to do to support that to be ready? And so that's a conversation we're having with them, because they have to pay something like $40,000 a year just to be compliant with fire safety, food safety, and all that sort of thing. So we started to have those discussions. Once again, they're slow, and I've made it very, very clear that councils, bank accounts, not going to be rated just to pay their bill, but through the long-term plans and through other marae, there could be something there. So the other marae that we would be looked to would be Kennedy Bay. So there are only 2 marae that we could really effectively send a lot of people to in a big emergency.
Are they vulnerable, some of them, in terms of their height above sea level? I remember Joe Davis was really concerned about some of them are really vulnerable in terms of inundation.
Manaia's fine.
Manaia's fine, what about Kennedy Bay?
Kennedy Bay is quite probably the more vulnerable of the two. It's been around a long time, so it's survived. But so we're pleased with the progress. We know we have to be patient. So that's the key message there.
And just a follow-on comment, the marae itself, the building might be vulnerable, but the marae is about that community, and the community itself have a plan to go up the hill and they'll take everybody with them.
Yes.
So it's actually, you're not actually planning around the building
Are
necessarily.
you not planning to use the building as a?
Absolutely, but if it was a flood or tsunami event, you could still rely, once we've got the plan in place, you could still rely on the community to take everybody and look after them. In a variety of locations.
And as usual up there, Tilly, we just needed the bubbles. She was there.
You knows how to make it happen.
So, I mean, back in my day when I was at school, and then lots of the schools, had the civil defence flag on the outside of the school hall or whatever. Are schools still
The wooden
used
house,
potentially?
they went straight after World War II. I know the ceiling was not the
Yeah.
He's been begging on about it for years about reintroducing the wooden posts, but no, we sort of moved on from those.
Sorry, but I mean, like, you're talking about marae being used at those places. What is their potential for school?
Oh, totally.
The advice from the experts is that we won't be using schools. They're not going to be the first one call, because in any kind of emergency, it's important to try and get kids back to school and not taking over the school
Right.
civil defence. That's a very important part of getting back to normal. And secondly, we don't promote or advertise any location as a civil defence centre or a post. We have in every plan a variety of options, because every emergency is different. Promoting a location before an event in the past has seen people actually themselves in danger to get to a place that they thought was going to be so
The fire might be on that side of town or that.
yes, they will literally go over a water causeway to get to the Civil Defence Centre with it, with in danger. So our messaging is always, we will let you know, listen to your radio, social media, whatever, notice boards, we will tell you where the safest place is.
So if you have an emergency and you need some evacuation for people overnight, how do you decide which one to use?
Well, it depends on what the emergency is. Is that building still standing? Is all five still standing? We can open up all five. 4 of them down and we can only use one up on the hill. So it just, we have to decide.
If we make that call based on the intelligence that's coming in.
On the event.
Yeah.
And then when we decide that this is it, we then immediately tell the radio stations, because hopefully at that stage, everybody's listening to their local radio. Everybody will have the same messaging. If you're going to Whangamata, go to the country, go to the golf club. If you're in the Tairua, go to the hall. If you're in Kawanui, there'll be specific information for people.
Hey, so those destinations have been understand that they're set up for overnight accommodation type thing. You discussed that one, maybe?
We can be here.
No. These places know that they are.
They know that they're used for an emergency service.
But we don't have supplies of blankets and food and water and at all these locations. That's not Civil Defence's job. Our role, and there's an expectation from the community that we do have bunkers somewhere with a whole lot of resources, which we don't. We have relationships and conversations, for instance, with the op shops prior to events, that if there's an event, we will come in and tell you blankets. We've had conversations with Booker Batch or Batch Care that in an event and houses are still standing, that we could let people into homes to use that as accommodation. So, and people are required to gather 3 days of supplies for themselves. That's what we're telling them. If you don't have it, don't rely on somebody else to give it to you.
Because I'm just watching what happened down south with the floods and things like that. They had to bring a whole lot of temporary housing in. And quite a major event.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if we get time, we may have some time. Helen's going to give us Helen's just come back from deployed down there, so we'll get a bird's eye view.
Martin.
So, you said earlier on about each of those 3 varieties, we had.
Oh, so the other one is to
having to pay 40,000 each year for those various fire and building safety, health and safety, food hygiene. And you also said, well, obviously you're not going to come along without banking capital. Is there any provision within council to be able to say that these places are going to be providing eventually civil defence facilities? They consider, I don't know, just.
So what I'm looking for.
Some bit of relief on that.
So the discussions with them will take time. What I'm looking for is the next LTP.
Yeah.
So in 2 years' time, hopefully I will have a package that I can take to the LTP for consideration that locks these in, especially for these 3 varieties.
And the huge bush hooks, like I can just, say I think about my friends at the Women's Refuge who did a huge amount of group work around food, security stuff. So they haven't actually got a building, but they would say probably that they kept a lot of whānau fed. So how do we support them as well? I think it's good that you've got 3 years.
And the thing is, it's almost about a community grant kind of thing, rather than it could be locked in. But let's just see what it looks like when we finish the chats with them. I know they give government support in various areas as well. We need to look for that. But the other thing is, what we need to do is, instead of looking at funding that, we need to challenge the fiscal compliance.
Yeah, I guess that's my main point. It's a huge amount of money that's come along.
You're right, and we're working with Fire on that because they're the most expensive, and they seem to have 3 inspections a year by 3 different companies. I'm not quite sure why. So it's similar to what we see around here as staff. There's always somebody in a uniform with a fire badge on, and then it's like, yeah. Well, we'll move on. So, discussions with 295 FM, as you'll see from the pictures, they have a number of towers, repeater stations around the picture, and they have cameras on there. So these cameras are fixed. One is they were installed, as John said, for the security of those cameras, so they could keep an eye on them, and if they were damaged, they'll be able to see. But also they offer a very good view, so they can, so on the back there, you've got the little prop you've got on the tar there, where they can zoom in to pretty much watch vehicles going up and down the road without identifying people, but they can get to what is it. So we are working on an agreement. It's sitting with their lawyers at the moment, so our lawyers and their lawyers are talking to each other regarding getting an agreement, because there's privacy issues that have to be dealt with, there's staff access issues and those sort of things. We would use these cameras for, as I've said before, fires, major storms if we're watching, maybe really bad storms coming in, we could go on these cameras.
So it's intelligence gathering.
It's intelligence gathering only, yeah.
Right.
But yeah, so it's just a piece of work that, once again, it's just another tool in the toolbox.
The Ocean Sports Club, they've got cameras also that look up the harbour, and you go online on your phone and have a look at something going on.
Yeah, so it just hasn't happened yet. We're still working through it, and it may not happen, and it may, but just, yeah, another tool. Okay, one item is just the Waikato, so I'm attending on behalf of, well, I've got key meetings, which is the Tornado Group, which is the city list. And Sally goes to the years, which is the joint committee. So we've got joint committee, you've got the generals, and then you've got the lieutenants, and then.
Sound like you think.
Yeah. So, but one of the things that came out of this, and I've just copied and pasted it for you, is to show you that our deployment policy isn't coming into force, and it's about the well-being of staff. So it's all very well saying to Helen, do you want to go down? And she'll say, yeah, of course, because that's what she does. The way she goes, life's pretty tough. It's like being in a war zone, which Helen will explain. And then she comes back and she's expected to go back to work. Or something happens here, which so this policy is in place, and it's very much supported by everybody to say, look, we just need to be conscious that we're dealing with people who have just, been doing 24/7 for a week. We need to put that up. So the policy is in place, and we will.
So explain the policy. What's it going to mean?
So if you read through the policy, what it really says, it's just about the well-being of staff when they're deployed and when they come back, how we communicate. So now, as a result of this policy, every day Helen and I communicate. So she just sends me a text, and instead of me ringing her to say, how are you? She just sends me a text, I'm in the pub. I'm having a meeting in the pub, which is true. She's staying at the pub. But yeah, so just little things like that, and it's just about staff well-being.
Right. So that'll be our response, our genuine desire to look after people, and our responsibilities under health and safety and that kind of thing as well.
It's long overdue.
Yeah.
And so what happens, Terry, when Helen gets deployed, is we continue to pay her wages and her, her normal costs, and then when she leaves, all her airfares and all her expenses, even parking at the airport and food and everything else, is covered by others.
Oh yeah, that's fine. Yeah, and what about some relief time when she gets back?
Yeah, so that's what the policy is.
In there as well.
Making sure she has a decent break before she comes back to work.
And that's not her annual leave, that's just policy, yeah.
So yeah.
That covers all emergency management.
Yep.
People.
Yep, everyone that's deployed.
Is that gone before council? Is it?
It won't be going before council, it's a key thing, so it'll be signed off the key and then it'll go to the joint committee. So it'll be done on your behalf. But it's just something that was of interest to say, well, we are working in this space because we need to.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'll just do a summary, very quick summary. So as you heard today, and Chair, we're very much in the resilience space. Really working hard on getting that resilience out there so that when things go wrong, hopefully we can rely on people with that else. It's plenty on.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
we hear from Helen about what you'll do is we'll receive this report.
We're just going to work program.
Yeah.
Very, very quickly. So this is the new work program. And pretty much I'll just take it as read. If there's any questions from it, everything is green at the moment. We're going to make this a very much a living document. We're going to add to it all the time because we end up getting ourselves, we get new projects on all the time, things we all think. So down the bottom of the standard work program, we're going to have all these other things that we're going to add in.
My sort of question really is it doable?
Yeah,
Is it realistic? You know, like, yeah.
we challenge ourselves on that, and we go through this all the time.
Right. Cool.
The only question I had is when I was looking through it, there seemed to be a lot of zeros in the actual and zeros in the budget.
So, yeah, so we are working on that. And the other thing too is how much information is the public arena and how much is for us as staff. So we've just got to work that through, but we can show budgets, we'll show expenditure.
That's fine.
We're lucky we have very little money, which is really good.
Well, I think she's got a good point. I looked at it too and thought, well, how can you do anything? There's no money in the budget to do it.
So there's not a lot of budget. I mean, we've got the evacuation project, which is $220,000.
Yeah.
And pretty much everything else is just
It's
done.
human related.
It's just done within our resources.
Fantastic. In that case, you must.
Yeah.
So tell me about training. All trained, all ready to go?
So there's been a real shift in the last year or so. Instead of bulk training anybody that says they can, been working through it with Gretchen and Human Resources to identify a key group of people. I think it's about 24 that we focus on the training on. Because when we set up for the 5th of January storm, for instance, there was 40 staff working in here. But if we train a key group of 24, we can still pull in if you've got good leadership. Our issue is that a lot of our staff now haven't had a lot of experience or, staff churn, plus also the pre-identification and the fact that those critical staff have been signed off by leadership team means that I know I can get them into training, and I know if we have an event that they're definitely going to be here. There won't be, oh no, we've got other priorities from their teams. And so although there's some of the staff have had some experience, the key leaders, the ideas, the 3 pillars, so we've got Brian Carter, our Ops Logistics Manager, Paku, our Intelligence Planning Manager, and then Kelly Hosky will be brought on for Welfare Manager. And under that, they have a key group of trained staff.
Right.
Now, leading up to the 4th of November exercise, every 6 weeks, we're having small group training, targeting, really practical. This is the document you're working on. This is how you do it. This is templates. This is best practice. So go through that. Yeah.
What about the role like Ken Cullen had? There was a gap to fill there. He was filling it. Has that been filled?
Formally now, Gary, so that came to council.
So you're the man.
He's the man.
I just changed heads. Yeah. That's what the council resources are at the moment. So until it changes.
But you still want to get like some committees, they don't have enough grunt in them. They end up being a little bit, I don't want to go type thing. So
I think that's what I've picked up over the last 18 months, that real push to make it that is part of your role signed off by you,
There's a lot more ownership by staff.
Yeah, rather than the problems here, and we'll just do our best when something comes. So, and at a national level, huge amount of work. So, what you're saying is you've got a work plan, you've got the 3 of you, and you,
Being a big practice EOC activation next week, Wednesday, here at the council chambers. If you guys want to come and participate or check it out or be part of it, I can pass the invite on to you. We're going to have folks to come and get the boxes, set up the desk, do the status boards, start up the laptop, just to make sure that everybody gets the practice right.
right before, and then the biddies in November.
But that's a part of, we know those boxes haven't been run through for 6 months. Well,
Yeah.
and Pam, equipment, it's ours, we get the whole team and get them to do it, because they also take them ownership.
So if you think we won't be in the way, if you want to give us a time that we can come and just, that'd be. Yeah.
It's all part of the popular, so it's not going to be great. So Madam Chair, that's my report on the work programme.
I'll move that we've received the report and the work program, and Chair seconds it. Thanks very much. Do you want to, we've got members' reports, but that won't take long. So do you want to tell us anything about Buller or what we should learn from them or not learn, or?
Is that carpet there?
Yep, I'm on the second first.
That will be easier.
Which one's that? So the Westport floods, 16th of July, and they declared the local state of emergency. And I mean, this is just a snapshot of what they face. Horrendous, absolutely horrendous. So the population of Westport, I looked in June 2020, was 4,600 people. Of that, 2,065 were evacuated. So huge, absolutely huge. And when you look at 71 red stickered homes on a population of 4,600, that's a huge percentage as well. So those 71, they can't go back into them. Some of them had flooded 4 years previous, and so, you know, flag for me is they're not going to get insurance again. So, you know, they've got real issues there. And then the 385 yellow stickered homes, but it's also quite a low socio-demographic that was impacted. And there is employment issues down there with the potential of the mine closing. So it's a really tricky, stressful situation for that community, I think. So at this stage, this was part of a presentation done for the Prime Minister when she turned up the day before I got there. But so at this stage, they had 509 welfare assessments, and I was working on the welfare desk. So I think in the end, it was around 600. So a huge response for them. When they initially did those evacuations, they just had welfare sites setting up everywhere because there was nowhere for people to go. A lot of people went to family and friends. And then they also set up, they've got an emergency operating centre in Westport that has one staff member. Like there's only one civil defence person there.
I don't see Marai there, they've got no Marais down there.
There was, no, but there's they don't have, there's quite a strong iwi support group, or, you know, that was working. So that there were people going to family and friends as well. So this is an old rugby club next to a hall where we were set up for our civil defence response, and people came from everywhere because you've got one person in a very small council in an overwhelming event. But I think probably because people came from everywhere, I think this is the best response I've ever been in. It was so well organised. Also, I was in it day 10. It was chaos those first few days.
Right.
But they, you know, just examples of the whole range of people, and they had the EMAC team, the emergency, you know, the flying squad. They came in and set up and started the processes, which I think is a really good idea if you are in that situation, or if we're in that situation as well. The other thing they do is down the bottom there, they've got a container you can see behind them, and it's the deployable coordination centre. So they've actually got that sited at Westport, but equally it's something that could be trucked into anywhere here if we had that sort of event. Fire and emergency were really strong. That picture on the left, they did a beach clean-up with the student army. So lots of support from lots of different people.
And what about power? Did they have generators come in, like the big power companies bring in some of the generators? How did they do that?
Oh, well, that was the early response days. The power went off to every property that had been flooded until an electrician could go in and turn it on again. But there was power, like they didn't turn off the power to the places that weren't. So for instance, the holiday parks that we had a lot of people staying in, they had power. So yeah, I don't think that was an issue. I think it was more about you couldn't actually have power on your property until an electrician had looked and signed up with fuse box.
Yeah.
Red Cross were amazing. So this is the tent that goes up. So we were up to that. So this is about this in the district team, but that was a meeting room. So we were having meetings in that tent there, and then this was half of our welfare team were in this side of it. So when this is set up, not only does it come with tent, it's the tables, it's the cords, it's the laptops. So it's just good to go, amazing. And they had two Defence guys that were there the whole week looking after it. So that was just part of it. So that's the people in the tent working, but we also had heaps of people in the building. So we were downstairs in a smelly part of the rugby club, as well as that half of the tent when we were doing
And that was emergency management's tent, was it? Whose tent was it?
NEMA, National Emergency Management, yeah, they have that. And it's up to Urban Search and Rescue have the responsibility for maintaining and looking after the resources within them. There's 5 deployable ones across New Zealand, plus there's caches. So
Where's our closest one?
I knew you were going to ask that question. I'm not sure, I will find out. But definitely there's a truck that will bring it.
Yeah.
But also,
Was the road open?
yeah, that was the road open. But it's all linked into, I mean, the emergency management, the EMAT team, which is the top right there, there's some examples of some of the people that were, they get helicoptered in, and you know, the resources can get helicoptered in as well if need be. So that was a key thing for me that was different from other responses, is that we were using and working this with this tent. They had real issues. Some of the key response priorities were managing spontaneous volunteers, because there was, if you imagine all those houses that had been flooded with sewage contaminated water, all their stuff had to go. And so the rubbish, the solid waste cleaning wasn't huge. That was a really big part of the response. We had teams out doing assessments, which were combined building assessments with Red Cross and our welfare team to go out and do the door knocks and undertake the needs assessment. That was a key learning, which I think we're well ahead of game on in Waikato. I was managing the welfare team. At one point had about 20 staff, and we managed to get that down. But one of the key things we were dealing with was over 600 different assessments. Started paper-based, then went to an Excel spreadsheet, then went into 2 different ArcGISs. So there was just data that was all over the place, and we were working at getting it into one database to hand to recovery. In Waikato, we've got a system ready to go behind the scenes that would take me 15 minutes to get it set up. That would ask the right questions. So I was chairing the Group Welfare Committee that had representatives from NEMA plus MSD, EQC, all the acronyms were there, asking for, well, what percentage of people have insurance? What are your demographics of those impacted? And I have to say, I cannot tell you because it has not been consistently collected. Whereas I think that's a learning from previous events that we've actually got an answer to now. And that's the benefit of going to these sorts of events. So the rubbish collection was huge, and they had the army going around with their big diggers, collecting and dumping the stuff. When the army left, which was about day 12, they were going to get the student army to do it, but they just physically couldn't move the amount of stuff that you would need to be moved without the diggers and the trucks. It was just mountains of rubbish. In terms of support, there was an amazing community group that run the hub, and that was a one-stop shop for people to go in and talk to all the acronyms, MSD, they had the insurance council there, and it's really important so people know where to go for help. So we were supporting the hub in terms of making sure that staff had lunches, and we had laptops and phones down there for them. They were really good about their public meetings. The really interesting thing about this event on social media, there was hardly any of that negativity. It was really positive, and I think it's because they had really good communications. The public meeting was amazing, well presented. A real issue is there's no accommodation. No. So we were looking after we were looking after from the welfare desk. I think it was it got down to about 70 people in commercial accommodation. They were in holiday parks where they've got shared toilet facilities and shared cooking facilities. And there is going to be nowhere for them to go.
No.
And they've started up the temporary accommodation service. That's the responsibility of FBIE. FBIE have something like 9 staff across New Zealand. And at the moment, they've got 5 active events that they're trying to find people long-term accommodations for. So it's going to be ongoing and a long-term issue, and I think a real issue for that community, which equally is something that we would definitely face here.
And that's what I was thinking, you know, if half of Thames went, you'd have nowhere to put people.
No. So, in terms of Gary was saying us at the pub every night, how they deployed the staff was, we got sent a link saying you're going down. It's a 7-day deployment, 1 day to travel, 1 day to travel back. So you get low and drove to Hamilton, flew to Christchurch, waited around for other car mates, drove a car to Westport, which was 5 hours, 4.5 hours. But we also got sent a link to find an Airbnb place. So I was lucky and managed to find a room to myself in sort of like a halfway house, I think it was, like a pub. But other people were in shared accommodation or in Airbnbs that were doing these response. So we started at 7 or 7 o'clock in the morning, worked through till 7 to 8 o'clock at night, long days. And then the last thing you wanted to do was go back to your shared room in somebody else's house or, but what we called it the Waikato debrief, and every night we went, I think one night I might have had 2 beers, but most of the time you're just going along, it's more somewhere to go to actually have a bit of a laugh at the end of a very long day. I'm trying to be quick because I know, but Waikato was outstanding. They sent 25 staff over the whole deployment. Noticeably, we were there, but also the group wealthy manager reported back that they'd had a North Island wealthy manager, group wealthy manager, who were the other day. And the comment was, look, how are you training your staff in welfare for Waikato? It is outstanding. So I was leading the desk, my 2IC changed halfway, but we had everyone from Katie from Hamilton and it went on to Philip and Ivy from Hamilton. We had people from Hamilton on that desk, and yeah, our training is so good. I'm sure that it made a difference because when I walked in at day 10, there's a structure, data everywhere, and I know it had been chaos, but I also know if they had the training that we run and got it step by step through the structures that we put into place, it would have been an easier ride for some of them. So, and I've grabbed all the templates, but it's a really good transition from response to recovery. And that recovery team is bigger, it is huge for that community.
Yes.
And that would be something that if we face this event, you'd be looking at that community as, what have you done, what's worked? And then just looking for opportunities for resilience.
When you look at this in the future, you would think that flooding is more vulnerable to New Zealand than tsunami. You look at the history. And yet we're still not very good at it, and yet it happens all the time. It's going to happen more and more. It's amazing that and it's all small communities. The cities don't flood out normally. It's normally community coastal communities that do it. And still we haven't got resilience there really.
Well, except that I think we've just heard Lois from the community to me and Kuatunu, our community response planning and what we're doing, I think is going to be huge in terms of that initial response. And then it taps into the work being done on the shoreline management plans.
But it won't stop the houses being flooded.
No.
It won't stop all that. So we need to rethink about what we're doing on these coastal things because we can be brave and run up the hill, but it doesn't fix the problem. Now, we've only got 71 people with no houses, no insurance quite probably. What are you going to do with them?
Yeah, so that's what we have to get our heads around.
What we do,
manage retreat or not, and someone's going to lose money at some stage, and you have to just pass it on to the next person. Well, it's coming home to roost quicker than what any of us imagined. So this is about building resilience while we work out how to build new towns.
And this is number one on my list of emergency management. Flooding is our biggest issue. Water from the sky, floods are lovely, tsunamis great, but we don't have them.
Exactly. Yeah. Everyone's attention is on tsunamis.
Yes. We don't have
shouldn't be.
Well, it's a bit about a matrix, though, isn't it? You know,
Yeah.
flooding is more frequent, but less consequential, you know.
Well, it's not less consequential. If you add up the numbers over the years, the numbers are huge.
No, but what I'm saying is the chance of having flooding is high. The consequence of having flooding is lower than like a tsunami. The chance of having a tsunami is very low, but the consequence is extremely high. So
Depends, though, it's all
it's a matrix, so.
So what we have to do is get our tsunami sorted and then lower the chatter about that so that we can then concentrate on our
More likely to
and
happen.
building resilience in this community, which is around inundation from the sea and from the hills.
And I just would like to say that they are actually parallel work streams happening at the same time. So the shoreline management plan work is exactly what's happening in that space.
Yeah, but if you look at the shoreline management plans around the coastal inundation, if you look what happens, we live above hills. All these coastal properties on Westland and all that are all above a range. The water runs down the hill. 800 mils in the hill, disaster down the bottom. And that happens regularly. It's not like it, yeah, we've got no resilience around the fact when the water runs off the hills, what do they do with it?
So I'm going to hold that conversation for SMP planning, and so that's good. So anything else you want to say about Westport, Helen, and lessons learned?
Yeah, so we always, after this, always come back and go, well, what's been really good? And there's a couple of really good templates, pretty much like I just started developed, but that I've grabbed, and then a couple of little actions from that. But the key one was going forward, it shouldn't just be the civil defence professionals going, and Waikato District Council, for example, sent the people that would be in the EOC team. I think the key for us is once we've got those staff trained, that it's the best learning experience. Exhausting, but really good. And as someone says, Helen, it looks like you're in your happy place. Well, I am. It's really good to go to somebody else's patch and put your training into place. But it's just also that you recognise there's so many Waikato people in that. So that was the upstairs of the rugby club, that's part of the room. All of those people, none of them are locals from the West Coast. They've come from all over New Zealand, and that's what probably makes it a good response. We shouldn't be shy about asking for help. We give it so often, you know, ask for it when an event happens.
Yeah, because we'd probably be quite bad at that. We can do this, you know, put our gummies on.
The cavalry, we talk to the cavalry a lot.
Yeah, that's what I mean, but I don't mean the staff, I mean us as politicians sometimes.
I think we have that good relationship with Hauraki and Kiako, which is really good. And we've got good responses for the Waikato. So I think a lot of the times it's not nothing for outside of what because it comes anyway.
Okay, so because I want to play, so.
And just that boiled down, it was part of our rugby team at the end when we had Fire and Emergency New Zealand, we had someone from their team, I had Red Cross, and just awesome staff. So that's my two slides, but we'll take one.
Good day.
That's us.
Thank you very much. Welcome, John, and your
Is this not?
little person. Yes, it's the emergency management. We just shut it down. Yeah.
You're on now, John.
So thank you very much for that. Thank you. We've received everything. Members' reports. Anybody got anything they want to say?
Yeah, I've got a couple of things. I want to just reiterate. I think I am really interested in the Wirecast program. It's fantastic. Beach access is we can access ways. We'd like to make sure that they're focused on. And and fantastic what you did down there, really good. I still find it's reactive, not preventative. And I'm looking for the bigger people like the regional council that making things that are fixed up rather than trying to fix up above the event. But fantastic work you did.
Thank you. And I just wanted to say that I represent this council on the joint committee, and we had a presentation which I've just put in the agenda for one of the Wellington manager of regional partnerships, just to give you a thumbs up that there's a whole act change, etc., etc., etc. It will have consequences for us. I think what I came away from the meeting was it made sense, but within the complexity of how does it fit with the changes to the Resource Management Act, that Act? You know, there's a lot of work that District Health Board does within that region or group, and then suddenly come next October, there won't be a District Health Board, you'll be working with a new entity, which could, so it's just a huge amount of change. I think that's what I took out of it. But really,
Will changes the minutes to the same.
yeah. So anybody got any other comments? Anybody got anything they want to highlight for agenda for next time? Could you thank the lowest for us?
I will.
And it's that other person who wanted to link in with us, well, I'm sure we could create a space next time, depending on what.
That'll be
we
good, man.
consider
If
most
it's done,
important.
she'll be happy to come in.
Yes. Yeah. Cool. Thank you very much. I'll clear the meeting. Oh, Robin and Dylan.
Thank you, and can we go back to the district manager report and proceed to move her?
Martin and Christine.
You and this.
Thank you very much.
Part of the family.
So thank you very much. So we've got a bit of a gap and then we've got an audit and risk workshop.